Is the Super Bowl something that only happens in a stadium? I think the answer is no, for obvious reasons. I think there is an event called the Super Bowl that happens in a stadium on Super Bowl Sunday, but millions of other people host events in their homes, and Super Bowl is an event. It's an event that people host, and it's really like an experience that people are part of. And I like to think of 2010, the NBA Finals, because I'm much more of a basketball fan. The Lakers were in Game 7 playing the Celtics, one of their big rivals, and they ended up winning the game, inching it out after Ron Artest made a crazy shot and just surviving by the skin of their teeth. And my brother actually recorded this. It's up on YouTube, where he recorded our reaction, and we're like jumping up like little kids. We're so excited. And just because we didn't buy a ticket to the NBA Finals and paid, $1,000 to be there, we were still able to experience the NBA championship from afar, and we were part of that experience. And I bring this up because I think this is similar to how people think about the church. And when you hear online church, you think, oh, that's not possible. And we like to limit it just to an event that happens in a building. I bring this up because I recently created this resource with pastors.com, and it was about online church and thinking beyond streaming, and it was a free resource. And they were running an ad, and I happened to see the ad in my Facebook feed, and I saw all these responses from pastors. I mean, these are Christian leaders, seminary trained people, and there were 50% of them were negative responses, like online church isn't church, don't forsake the gathering, you can't prove a positive and a negative, and it made me feel very disappointed. And this is the best thinking that we're producing, that the first response to something like online church is the gag. I call it Amish thinking. I had two people reply to me and felt like that was negative. And I just thought it was true, that the Amish literally don't embrace many new technologies because they see it's the way of the world. And it's not a good thing, and it's distracting. And they actually teach, the Bible teaches that. Now, you can think that's noble, which is okay, but you can personally believe that and avoid it, but you can't say that this is something allowed by Scripture or commanded by Scripture. And I think there's some things to think about this with online church. First thing to consider is that our primary relationship with our Creator is non-spatial. It's not physically based. So I connect with my God. I can know my God. John 4 talks about this idea that, God is spirit, and we will worship him in spirit. And somehow it's a non-spatial, non-physical type of relationship, but I can know him and have an intimate connection with him while I've never met him in person. Darrell Bock, the theologian, says the idea of, kind of echoes this idea of that, our primary relationship is very virtual with our Creator, and that every time you say God can't work through or in online church, you're literally limiting his omnipresence. You're making him not God. Another thing to think about is the way Paul and Jesus use the word church in the New Testament. Paul uses the word local church often. In 1 Corinthians 1:2 is an example. He says, to the church that meets in Corinth. And he's literally talking about a group of people gathering in Corinth. But it's also to think that when he writes this letter and they gather to read it, if somebody wasn't present, were only the people in the room when they first read it, were they part of that? Is that what Paul was only writing to? No, even the people that maybe slept in or maybe were lazy, didn't come or whatever, were still included in that word church in Corinth. And then Jesus in like Matthew 16, when he says to Peter, hey, I'm going to build my church on you. Now, spoiler to my Catholic brothers and sisters, he's not talking to Peter literally. He's talking to the faith like Peter. He's going to build his church on people like Peter. He's not talking to a specific church. He's talking about the universal church, everybody. So somehow you and I, we can be part of different churches, but we're still connected. So I find it interesting that even the word church is used in a very universal, non-spatial way, and also a very specific way. And so you can't even say always the word church, ecclesia, or koinonia, or whatever word you want to use, is used in a very diverse way. So when they say you can't do that, I find it interesting because Jesus and Paul use that word in a variety of ways. And then lastly, the Bible talks a lot about how there are things we are supposed to do in our daily life. We're supposed to be the church in our community. And I think about like Galatians 5, the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience. I do that when I'm with other people and when I'm by myself. So if I'm being the church, let's say to my neighbor, and I don't have another believer near me, am I not being the church in that moment because I don't have another person near me who's a follower of Jesus? No. I also think of missionaries who go off to places and they don't have another member of their church. Are they somehow disconnected? Because the only way you can do church is you got to have a warm body near you. I find it Amish thinking because I think it's very limited. And I like the example of the marriage kind of illustration that, my wife and I, we use technology to enhance our relationship. And so, yes, we live under the same roof and we primarily connect in a very physical way, near each other spatially. But at the same time, we're able to text and use technology to enhance what we're doing. And so coming back to this, when Christian leaders see this, they see online church, they think that's not possible. And I just would challenge them to go, there's so much more to what's possible. And you can hold to the belief, and this is actually what's going on here. There's this protectionism or idealism to what the word church is, that the best expression of church is physical near each other. And I would agree. That's the best expression. But let's not limit God to what he's doing through and in technology and what's happening in online type of ministry and online church. And so the same way that I can participate in the Super Bowl while not being in the stadium, I think you can participate and be part of the church and not be in a building. So that's, and I ultimately think that's what Scripture teaches and reveals. And many of these responses, and many people feel this, I think put God in a box. And I guess I just don't want to put God in a box. And ultimately, I think we got to think better because we represent what Jesus actually believes. And I think when you say that's not possible, I think God would personally gag.